Clean Water Conversations is sponsored by Chesapeake Conservancy, working to conserve and restore the natural and cultural resources of the Chesapeake Bay Watershed for the enjoyment and inspiration of this and future generations. Thank you, Chesapeake Conservancy. And now, on to our show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Clean Water Conversations, the podcast where we have casual discussions about creating clean and clear waterways right here in Lancaster County. I'm Ken.
Hi, I'm Allyson.
Allyson, Valentine's Day is coming up.
It's so sweet.
Oh, you've been hanging around me too long. Oh, any fun memories? Any fond memories of Valentine's Day, either growing up or even since you've been an adult?
I have to say that I love that my husband and I always celebrated the day before. So we avoid the crowds at the restaurants and
Good thinking.
we just have that as our little thing. But in a profession now where I get to be a collaborator and just say thank you and make everyone feel loved all the time, I feel like I should be sending out the elementary school Valentines to everyone in the network. So I better get started now because there's a lot of love to share.
There you go.
And you can?
I'm not so noble. I go back to either my or my kids' elementary school. Exactly those cards that you were talking about was always nice, and those little candy hearts that had faces on them and stuff. So
we may have just bought more of those for our house last night.
I love the way you guys celebrate holidays. It's just
with candy.
That's so festive.
Yep.
That, in fact, is awesome.
Oh.
So what is on your list of awesomeness right now?
Oh, my list of awesomeness is not quite. Well, it is exciting because we had a room full of people recently for a conversation about Act 167, which if it just stands alone, it's kind of like, what is, you can probably buzz me for that just because it's about as unknown as an acronym in some circles. I don't feel like it. Okay. Well, it's related to stormwater. It's related to the support that our municipal partners need. And so to have a room full of people that was literally overflowing out the back door was just wonderful. And with new details of the MS4 permit coming out, there's some great opportunities to work together even more. So that's my list of awesomeness for right now, is just the way that our municipal partners are really engaging and participating to make sure that their voices are heard. So I appreciate them, and I appreciate the way that we can be a facilitator and convener for these kind of conversations.
And I still don't feel like buzzing you for MS4, which stands for Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System.
Look at you go.
Yeah.
I feel it. We've covered
That's repetition right there.
Exactly. We've covered it in other podcasts. I thought I was loud.
No. It's on an individual episode basis. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You're lucky I'm feeling lazy today.
No, you're feeling kind and generous for Valentine's Day.
That's what we're going to go with.
What's on your awesome list, Ken?
On my list of awesomeness, I have some really big projects coming up. I'm working on the year in review from 2024 and looking back over all of the things that went on, all of the awesomeness over 2024. I'm just reminded of all of the really cool stuff that our partners are doing just for getting us to the goal of clean and clear by 2040.
Yeah.
So, that's really awesome to see all the things that were done, just to get that kind of reminder. And I also have some video projects coming up, and I love creating videos.
Yes.
Yep.
That'll be fairly fun.
That should be fun. That should be a lot of fun.
Just like today's guest. He's really fun. Talk about a character.
He is indeed. See, there's a reason we are laughing more just in the intro than we normally are.
Yes.
Yeah, he's the senior watershed planner at Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and we are talking with Mr. Brian Gish.
It's like, you thought you got me, you didn't.
He is dedicated to the craft.
Well, and this kind of touches on one thing, a lesson that I learned early on is, okay, if I'm going to go and talk somewhere, I pull together everything I want to say, and then I throw out a good 25% of that and replace it with really bad jokes.
Perfect. I love it.
Well, and I found it makes the 75% that's left, I think it doubles the amount of impact it has. So essentially, by cutting out 25%, I have increased my effectiveness by 50%. And I have two theories why. One, they're having fun with the jokes.
Yeah.
This is what I like to believe, but the reality is probably more that they say, thank God it's not the joke portion. I'm going to focus on this and really listen. So
I got to remember that.
the exception to this is kids. Kids love my jokes. I do well with the kids. It's the adults. It's like they've aged out of good humor.
Oh, man.
Yeah, my goal is to make this fun. If you learn nothing from me, but everyone, like us around the table and everyone listening has a great time, I've succeeded.
Mission accomplished. Yes.
You just pretty much summed up our podcast right there.
Well, I think our icebreaker is going to be a perfect fit as we
Yes.
continue to learn about Brian's motivations and stories of adventure.
Well,
Goodness.
Then let's break some ice. Here's a question. You are going to sail around the world. What is the name of your boat and why?
So, I have a boat right now, and it has the most perfect name for how I use it. The boat is the Albatwitch. For those of you unfamiliar with the Albatwitch is a cryptid species, not unlike the Sasquatch, however, smaller in stature and fond of throwing apples at people. And they, I believe they are now extinct, to be perfectly honest, but they were on the shields of the Native Americans when Europeans showed up in the area. And their last bastion is believed to have been around Chickies Rock. And so, having grown up at the base of Chickies Rock, right there, had to go with the Albatwitch, especially on the Susquehanna. So this would have to be the Albatwitch 2. And if I'm going around the world, anyone who knows me is going to know that sailing around the world, that fishing rod is never leaving my hand.
With you at all times.
So, mountain of tackle. And I also want, and I don't care if this is a fictional item. I guess it's kind of less fictional all the time. I want the universal translator from Star Trek. Because
Star Trek.
I want to go fishing with everyone along the way that I find and be able to tell bad jokes and everything with them. Find out. Oh, and I probably pack a bottle of selenium pills to counteract all the mercury I'm going to be ingesting by eating so much fish. But I think if I have the universal translator, so I can like just jam with these guys about fishing, and got my selenium, probably some Dramamine too. I've never gotten seasick because I've never been in a situation where I would have.
Okay.
Every time, the handful of times I've been out on big water, it's been like glass.
Yeah.
But I know I would be the first one hanging over the gunnels, just in abject misery.
Oh, geez. So, Brian, you mentioned Chickies Rock.
Yes.
Tell us about where you grew up, because you are a Lancaster County native. I know there's a full history here. So tell us some of, what your family history is. I will open that door.
So, talking about earlier, the pen I brought.
There's no hesitation. Don't worry.
This pen for Kenn.
Oh, wow.
Made out
Thank
of
you.
white oak. Because my family, the Gishes, we founded the bustling metropolis of White Oak in 1733. Most people just know it as the largest suburb of Penryn, Penn Township. And I am the 12th Gish born here in Pennsylvania. It's 12th generation, I should say. But family names Gish, Nisley, Heisey, Wagamuth, like these are quintessential northwestern Lancaster County names.
Yeah.
It isn't just Lancaster County, it's that part, And so, my family has been in the Chickies Creek watershed ever since. At least my dad's side, I should say. My mother is not a native Lancastrian. You didn't know that? No. My mother's family, they moved to E-Town when she was in high school. Now, she is a Chesapeake Bay watershed girl.
Yes.
She is from the coal region, Monoy City. So, I'm 3/4 Pennsylvania Dutch, but I am also, a quarter of my family is from Lithuania. That's how I have this beautiful nose. I like to say it's a monument to Baltic resistance. But I grew up, like I said, right below Chickies Rock on the northern side, outside of Marietta. So I was within walking distance of Chickies Creek, Little Chickies Creek, Donegal Creek, and the river.
Hence the fishing.
The fishing, yes, by proximity, but I would say even more so from my grandfather.
Okay.
Now, I don't want to sell my dad short. He also took me fishing when I was little. But my grandfather, he kind of, his, I don't know if obsession's the right word, sickness, in as far as like a chronic fishing affliction. His is analogous to mine. And
chronic fishing affliction. I think that's the name of my next band. Right there.
That'd be great. Opening for Real Big Fish.
Yes. There you go.
So it really is like a chronic disease. I contracted it from him, I would probably say. And so from the time I could walk, I was going fishing. And if I wasn't, I wanted to be fishing with Pap.
Mm-hmm.
When I got a little bit bigger, where I could ride my bike to the creek, walk to the creek, I was there. That's where I was. And I was fishing. And I think this I can start to kind of also give my mother some credit of get out of the house. So it was beneficial. And I even then when I could drive, I know after school, a lot of times things like that, I would shoot over to the river to meet my grandfather there. We go out wading in the warmer months, go fishing, particularly right around the mouth of the Conewago Creek by 3 Mile Island.
Okay.
We did a lot of fishing there. And so I would have to say more than anyone, my grandfather probably gets the credit for why you have to be annoyed by me on a regular basis. I doubt I would be in this line of work were it not for those experiences and having those passions kind of whipped up like that.
Well, was there ever like one moment in your childhood that you remember that kind of solidified where you are now?
It's one of these things that there's so much credit in our lives that I can say my grandfather was the biggest influence in that regard. But it's almost impossible. You're never going to get them all. I mean, I had some great teachers growing up who kind of stirred that passion for that. I remember like in junior high, Mr. King, he was a science teacher there. I still remember some of his acronyms. I'm not going to say them because, and even some of his phrases, like how I knew that the part of a female flower is the pistol. He'd always say pistol packing mamas. So I remember things like that.
Shout out to Mr. King.
I had and then going through college and grad school, I had some great professors who kind of fostered these sorts of things. And then, in professional relationships, because I wasn't originally working here in the water world. So, my education built to that, but it wasn't exclusively to that. And so I'm glad I got here, but it wasn't like an immediate thing.
What made you jump into the water world from what you were doing before that?
So I guess I'll take a step back just to school in general. So I went to Donegal. When I graduated, I guess a little before that, I had to pick where I was going to college. So I applied to 3 schools. I applied to Penn State, Carnegie Mellon, and Johns Hopkins. And I went to Carnegie Mellon. I didn't care for it. So it was the last day to decide to say where you're going to school. And I still hadn't decided between the other two. My mom, I guess there was something going on at school that day that I really wanted to do. And my mom's like, you're not going to school till you decide. So for a flip of a coin, I went to Johns Hopkins. And I started off with the intention of studying biomedical engineering and computer science. Well, that grew old quick.
Yeah, that's not fishing in water necessarily.
So wait till you hear this is just kismet, what happened. So I knew I didn't want to do this. And so I'm just walking the halls of the various buildings, and I was in the School of Engineering, and I'm in what we would call, I'm going to follow this up right away, Ken.
Okay, all right.
Doggy, which was the Department of Geography and Environmental Engineering, which now I think it's been restructured. I don't even think Doggy exists anymore. But I'm walking through there, and I stop, and on the wall is a huge picture of Chickies Rock.
Wow.
And this older guy comes up to me and he puts his arm around me. You see that? That's the largest exposed syncline this side of the Mississippi. I'm like, I know. He's like, how do you know? I'm like, I grew up like less than a mile from there. I took this as a sign from God that this was my department to go to. That man was Reds Woolman. He has since passed, but because I think he was 70s or 80s when I was there, he became my advisor.
Okay.
He's the one who, in the field of geomorphology, developed pebble counting. And this is how we can tell by what size pebbles and where they are in a stream. We can tell how that stream is going to move, what its history was. It's a fascinating thing, and it is standard now. Everyone does a pebble count. A thing that was kind of running parallel to this was when I was in college, I was in ROTC. And unfortunately, when I was expecting to be commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Army, for some reason, the Army doesn't want people with seriously dysfunctional digestive tracts. So I kind of had the rug pulled out from under me there. But talking with Reds and stuff, I decided I would go to grad school instead. Another thing that was happening kind of simultaneously with that is summers, I did internships. Specifically, I interned at the county of Lancaster here. And I worked in the Geographic Information Systems Department, GIS.
You can use that now, by the way.
Okay, yeah. See, it's like boom. And the Planning Commission. And I had some people there who gave me just great inspiration. Jay Parrish, who was head of the GIS department, who then went up to the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources.
He's on it.
He was at the Geological Survey there, and when I went to grad school, he took me with him. But and then at the Planning Commission, Scott Standish and Mike Doman, and I got to experience so many things. I really liked planning, largely because of this complete attention deficit disorder brain. Planning is amazing because you get to do a little bit of everything. So I decided to go to graduate school for planning. So I went to the University of Pennsylvania for that. Ended up coming out with a degree, a Master of City Planning with a concentration in environmental planning. And there I had another amazing professor, John Kenn. He wasn't just a professor. He taught city planning, but he taught the law classes there because he was a lawyer by training. I think he went to Harvard as a degree in law. And he did planning law, land use law, and environmental law. And I hit it off immediately with Professor Kenn, and he, very pertinent to Lancaster County, he had a huge focus on ag preservation. And he was the one who basically refined the notion of what we would call transfer of development rights, TDR, as a mechanism for agricultural preservation.
Yeah.
Now, TDRs, the way it works, so if you have a property, we often think of it as one thing, but it's really, in legal terms, what we would call a bundle of rights. And those could be things like you have the right to occupy that area, you have the right to sell it, you have the right to build on it. And so TDR, it's that last right I talked about, the right to build, the development rights. So every property kind of has those. Well, we can kind of look at that not just as fixed to that property, but something we can move around and transfer. So what you do is, if you want to preserve anything, but we'll talk about farms right here. So this farm, we don't want it to be developed, but it has the development potential and those development rights. Well, you could then sell those to someone somewhere else. Now, you need two agreeable communities. One, where they're willing to sell it. Two, a community that's willing to receive it. But for example, here, let's say there's a farm in East Donegal Township. That farmer could technically develop 100 units. Well, we have the city of Lancaster, and we have an agreement that says, hey, if these people develop this site over here in the city, we'll let you sell them those units, and they can add an additional 100 units to that site. And it's really neat because, it's wonderful what we have going on here with the Agricultural Preserve Board and Lancaster Farmland Trust, LFT. I'm really just leaning into this acronym thing.
I'm writing them down.
So it's really, they do great things, but they're buying things and holding on to them, using their money. Right here, if you use these TDRs, you have a market mechanism to do this. where you don't need to use tax dollars. It helps in that way too, because suddenly plain sect farmers who may be a little more reluctant to take money from a government source, this is just a business transaction. Now, it's tricky, and this has been the pitfall that a lot of TDRs fall into. You really need someone to really maintain this and do the accounting and do it well. So there's baggage that comes with it. But anyway, Professor Kenn kind of crafted that. And so for a while, I went and was working as a municipal planner. My last job in municipal planning, I was the chief planner for the city of Easton, Pennsylvania, up in the Lehigh Valley. Great town. But I got to the point where after 10 years of working in that field, I was just like, I don't want to do municipal things anymore. So then I went to do doctoral work at Lehigh in environmental science. And unfortunately, those same things that turned the Army off of me, it kind of started having those problems again. Had to actually leave my doctoral work, take care of my health. It's important to look after your health.
Absolutely.
Thankfully now, then after some time, some surgery, medication changes and things, feeling great. And so I kind of do I want to go back into the PhD program or do some of that? Because it is stressful. Or do I want to do something else for a bit? So I decided, okay, I'm going to go back to do some work. I was doing some consultant work originally with Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, LVPC. My boss who was there from Easton, she is now the director, Becky Bradley of the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. And she knew everything. We've been good friends for quite some time. And she's like, yeah, look, I'll hire you as a consultant, kind of get you back into doing this. And I was commuting from Marietta to Allentown every day, which was a bear. And that's when I saw this opening for Chesapeake Bay Foundation.
Or
CBF.
Just in case you want to use it later.
Yeah. Look at he's an ally.
I'm trying to help you out.
I know. I came in here thinking this was going to be an adversarial relationship with the shame buzzer. But really, he really wants me to succeed.
He does.
I do, actually.
Either that or he's playing the long game with this ruse. I don't know. And the thing is, so started working this job, and I absolutely love it. So it really took a lot of wind out of the sails for doing the doctoral work then, because I don't need it to do what I'm doing now. At some point, I may try to find a way to kind of integrate that into the work I'm doing so could get the degree, because, man, making people call me Dr. Gish when they don't want to, that just... Especially if I did stuff, because we covered this acronym GIS, Dr. Gish, because you can't spell Gish without GIS.
Nice.
She's heard it before.
I like that one.
I was waiting for it to show up.
So, I mean, and that's what's kind of the roundabout way that I got here.
In 2018, 2019, Brian, you and I got to work together almost daily. We worked together as co-leads for writing gathering feedback to write the Lancaster Countywide Action Plan, or the CAP. So tell us about that process for you. Why was it important for Chesapeake Bay Foundation to be part of it, but also why Lancaster's was so important?
Well, first, to say co-lead, she did the heavy lifting, even though it said co-leads. Yeah.
Not true.
But no, that process was so important for a number of reasons. But it was, in a way, it was terrifying on a certain level, because here they take, and I will tell people this day in and day out. You want a healthy Chesapeake. There is no county anywhere in that watershed that's more important than Lancaster. Am I biased? Yes. Am I also right? Yes. And so what do? They take the most challenging county that there is to deal with, both in terms of scope and scale, and you go first. We go first. So, we're the ones who have the hardest problem to solve, and we're flying blind. But we had such great partners working hard, just people who really wanted this to come together. I think we had just a perfect mix of personalities, of abilities, of knowledge. And we also, I think, had a really solid driving sort of ethos or something that we are going to be ambitious and realistic.
Yeah.
We didn't want to just kind of sit in our laurels and not do all we could, but we also didn't want to overpromise and underdeliver. So I'm very proud of the work that came out of that. And of course, like you have a lot of these things like CAPS. Key is implementation. It's only as good as the implementation. Mm-hmm. And along with that, you have to do appropriate tracking, following along with this. And I think we built in a lot of mechanisms for that.
That's true.
And I remember the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, they were pleased, like when we kind of came out and said, hey, we want another component in this that's data.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't required to have something where we are tracking and monitoring and inventorying data. We said, you can't do this without that. So things like that, I think we stepped up to the challenge. And I say we as a huge Lancaster County water community did. And to have been a part of that, I am very, very proud. I mean, it was right here and I have a picture on my phone of this, of both Allyson and our hands on the mouse pushing down the send together simultaneously.
If you send that to me, I'll put it in the show notes.
All right, I can do that. Yeah.
We've had the chance to revise it every 2 years or so. So we can change the BMPs or we can change the number of acres.
What's a BMP?
Oh, I'm the first one for the buzzer.
Go ahead, explain what a BMP is.
I think that's my badge of honor between the two of you. Jeez.
Shame.
All those best management practices that are included in the Countywide Action Plan, the list of those we could adjust to fit where we are now. Like that was written in 2018, 2019. So what's based on what's changed, based on new data, based on new calculations. How does that tool still play such an important role for us in Lancaster?
Oh, you're asking me?
I am. Because like you said, implementation. So,
well,
you and your team at CVF as others, you're implementing it.
Because if plans die, they're like sharks. They have to keep swimming and moving or they die.
That's a good analogy.
It is good enough. Yeah.
Well, I mean, a static plan that doesn't adapt to circumstances, because you put your best effort in up front, but you're going to get things wrong. You can't get it all right. And if you just kind of just lock into what that original sort of plan was, I forget there's some sort of bias they call that. I think it's like mission bias that, I'm doing this. This is because this was the plan. And you need to kind of look at what's working, what isn't, how do we adapt to kind of achieve the goal? Because you may have heard this story before. I've been told it's apocryphal that pens don't work in outer space because you need gravity. So NASA developed the astronaut pen where it's in a pressurized ink cartridge so you could write with a pen. The Russians used a pencil. So the difference between these is what you would call working the problem or working the solution. NASA worked the problem. They're like, what's the problem? A pen won't work in space. The Russians, and don't get me wrong, the Russians did a lot of things that were bizarre and just terrifying. But
no offense to any Russians who might be listening.
Yeah. In this case, though, they there's it doesn't matter that a pen doesn't work in space. What's the solution is, how do we write in space? So to be able to do that sort of adaptive management of these plans, I think it makes the plan so much stronger. It doesn't in any way weaken it. And so we have such a heavy lift here. We want to give ourselves the tools to be as successful as we can. And one of the tools that we have is this reflection, reevaluation, and saying, we did this, and now we're going to do it even better.
Yeah.
So,
that's really great. You do that a lot. Like the CAP is one plan that you worked on, but with all of your experience and expertise, and tell us about some of the other watershed planning that you do.
Certainly. I am one of the 2 senior watershed planners at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And I do a lot of things, wear a lot of hats, but kind of the most central one is developing watershed plans. And the watershed plans we develop, they're called Section 319 plans. This relates to a piece of the Clean Water Act, Section 319 under it. And underneath that, they have the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, has all these sorts of these 9 requirements that you really have to, like, you need to meet these if you want this plan to be approved. Things such as you have to have education components. You have to identify your sources of pollution. You have to identify funding streams, potential funding, among others. And if you get all these sort of boxes checked, and they go through a very rigorous review, if you get those checked, there's a pool of money that can only be given to projects in approved 319 plans. Now, our plans, I talk about myself and my counterpart, Caitlin, who started when I did. Caitlin Gogola, who in our work, she is my better half. She is the heart, the soul of the work we do. And I wouldn't tell her this to her face, of course, but actually I do. I tell her all the time because it's like, no, and part of the reason we were told because there were quite a few people who applied for our 2 positions. We were told one of the big reasons that we were hired was we just have this really strong feeling that those 2 people are going to work well together. Mm-hmm. And we probably work too well together. They're like, oh man, what have we created here? But we're very complementary to each other's sort of abilities, skill sets. Caitlin is really good in developing means of public engagement, things like that. I am, back from my days when I worked in consulting, I worked at Ritu. I was called the data monkey because I just love data and analysis. So you bring those 2 together, and it's just this very synergistic thing. I mean, she is on maternity leave right now, and I constantly pester her, not about work stuff, just about other things, more annoying things than work. And so the 4 plans that we've written so far, we have here in Lancaster County, Pequay Creek and the Upper Conestoga River, the headwaters area of that. And then Caitlin, her first one was Half Moon Creek and Marsh Creek, both in Center County. So it's interesting because I'll be honest, 319 funding, what is allocated is a pittance. I believe it was under $5 million for the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And you guys know how fast you could eat that up with projects, particularly some of these bigger agricultural ones. And when you have a few dozen streams, I mean, so we really say this process that we do this, it isn't just for that, but if I'm going for a different grant, I'm getting money somewhere else. I can say, look, check out this plan that we wrote. This thing went through this rigorous review from DEP, EPA, both of which were acronyms I've established.
You have.
And we're doing projects in line with this. It gives weight to when you apply for those other sources. The other side of it is so these plans, we do very rigorous analysis in these because, like we've said, we have limited resources. You want to do, you want the biggest bang for your buck. You want to be pointed. And these plans are the means to do that, to really do that. And it combines both that analytic side and this human side to kind of saying where are the areas we want to focus. And because I can write the most perfect plan in terms of the science, but people don't want to do it, it's going to go nowhere. And conversely, if people want to do a bunch of things that aren't really kind of going to create load reductions, it's like, well, you're spinning your wheels. Yeah. So, and we kind of tried, like the CAP, we try to build these, and I'm not going to name individual people and things because I'm going to miss someone, but talking more in terms of sectors, whether it's folks like us at CBF, nonprofits who are involved in this, governmental and quasi-governmental agencies, and even things like people on the outside might not immediately kind of connect to this, but things like Lancaster Farmland Trust. Mm-hmm. And along with them, kind of other ag sort of focused organizations such as agribusiness. We have that. And of course, first and foremost, the citizens who are would implement this, especially here in Lancaster County, the agricultural community and Plainset community as a subset of that are very important. So we feel this process, it's very valuable to kind of do the deeper dig and not just willy-nilly. And and on top of that, so there was this thingy that came out 2 years ago.
Of course, that's a technical term.
I know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. The Comprehensive Evaluation of System Response Report.
Ooh, yeah, that one.
CESAR. Mm-hmm. Kind of taking a step back and looking like, okay, we've been trying to clean up the Chesapeake for years. What's working? What isn't? And sort of what they kind of really kind of identified as an issue is, we're looking at this thing as this whole big problem rather than where are these places where we can have these successes, rather than like the big thing that comes up is the deep channel in the Chesapeake there. And so we so I remember Caitlin and I were looking at this and we're like, this is what we're doing already. We break these watersheds down. We do very detailed topographic analysis to break bigger watersheds into tiny little basins, and then we focus on them. Pequea Creek, there were 33 basins. We focus on 7. And EPA basically told us, because I remember, this is at DEP, Scott Heidel, he reviewed my plan, and he told me for Pequea, and he said when he saw Pequea on his desk, he's like, oh, you got to be kidding. Because the scale, 153 square mile watershed. So watersheds are broken up into these things, hydrologic unit codes, or HUCs. And then in the numeric sort of order, the bigger the number, the smaller the watershed. So most of what they do are HUC 12s. And it's hierarchical. Pequea is a HUC 10. And when he saw that, he's just like, why am I even going to look at this? Well, when he got in, he's like, yeah, this is how you do it. You break it down. You don't, like, what do they say? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So we've taken that approach throughout here. And yeah, that's, I think, really important to making these plans sort of work. And yeah, we like it. And I'm not saying this to knock other people's plans, because we have resources and some skill sets that not every organization is going to have. So many of these plans, you look at them and it's just page after page after page of block text. And that's all well and good if you're applying for grants, but if you're just a person not here in the biz, are you going to read that? So we try to make these much more compelling graphically, something that you want to kind of turn the next page, engages you that way. So we definitely pull in a design element.
Make it look pretty.
Yeah. I mean, like me.
Yeah,
got to have the eye candy. That was the other reason I was hired. So we really try as best we can to kind of make this something that isn't just going to sit in a shelf and gather dust, apart from when someone wants to apply for a grant randomly. Like, no, we want people to see this as a tool to get to know your watershed. And the plan itself is just kind of the culmination. And doing things like, I was really happy this past year as part of Lancaster Water Week, we did the Upper Conestoga event.
Yeah.
And we did it at Historic Pool Forge, and Dawn up there, she was just wonderful. Like, I can't say enough about how much she helped. But we did it during Water Week. We had over 200 people were there, fed them pizza. We had all sorts of different organizations, from Trout Unlimited, TU, to Conservation Districts here, Lancaster Conservancy, all these different groups. Kind of just, process isn't just about reducing loads, nitrogen, sediment, phosphorus. It's also about making this waterway, the creek, important, to the people, like seeing it not as a thing in the community, but a part of the community.
Yeah.
And those sorts of events are just so great for that. We look at, it's a big picture. Yes, we have those specific requirements to pass a watershed implementation plan, or WIP. So we have all those requirements, but we're not going to confine ourselves to that. We're going to look bigger. So I'm really excited about the next plan that I'm writing.
Well, the details just came out for the new municipal separate storm sewer system, or MS4 permit. How can thinking and acting like a watershed help Lancaster as it relates to those requirements?
Well, here's the thing, like, watersheds do not respect municipal boundaries. They go where they want to go.
True.
And so thinking about this from a watershed perspective, I think, is important, rather than, and I'm going to say, rather than even looking at MS4 as a regulatory structure. We're so focused on checking boxes, doing things. And I understand if you're a manager of a municipality, you got to maintain compliance, things like that. But I think we really need to start changing our mindset about MS4 to start looking, hey, these things can really benefit us, these projects, not just it's a requirement.
Right.
You start looking at things like, well, if you're managing stormwater better, it does so many good things for your community, whether it's flooding, people, if you get water backing up in your basement, if you have combined systems like in Lancaster City, overflows go into the river. Also, a lot of these projects, they can take place and sometimes we even create new public open space, things like that. So we need to get out of the mindset of, this is something we have to do, and start thinking, this is something we get to do.
Yeah.
And there are some interesting things like trying to navigate, if you do look at it at the regulatory side, particularly in a place like Lancaster County, trying to reconceptualize, because we look at a lot of this as purely urban and suburban, these really defined systems, but trying to see, are we focused on just meeting certain lines, or are we looking to improve water quality? And that then pulls in things that are rural, particularly agriculture, into that equation. Also, I think, like we talked about that municipal boundary issue, like watersheds don't really care about municipal boundaries. Looking at those partnerships where municipalities can say, we're going in on this together, and rather than kind of this sort of, sometimes it's a zero-sum game mentality. MS4s are a bit tricky for me because I do these 319 plans, and the federal government, they are very careful about not letting you double dip. And because you have federal requirements and different things, they aren't super keen on me saying in my plans, stormwater things. Like, no, that's the purview of the MS4, Whereas for me, I think, again, I'm very much against silos. I really like, as much as I can, getting some integration in here. And so I sneak things in. And I can't be explicit in the way that I could, for example, saying, here are where buffers should go. I can talk more generally about it. And all of our plans, well, certainly ones I write, I embed a good bit of strategic ambiguity. And that was part of the incentive of breaking things into these smaller basins, because you get these smaller areas. I can say, I want things happening in this area, but I don't have to call out a given farm or something, because that instantly changes the dynamic and how that farmer interprets what's being, because right now I have a federally approved document that says something has to happen here. And that just, in Lancaster County, you're just setting yourself up for failure if you view it that way. But if I say, let's focus in this area, let's do so many miles of stream buffers, let's do so many acres of cover crops, so many acres no-till, and I talk about it in an area, now these can be small, it could be 1 square mile, that's 640 acres. But it takes confrontation out of it. And so kind of how all this sort of comes back in with the MS4 and things like that. I think just a lot of it, we just need to kind of reframe how we're thinking about these things. So,
well, the good news about the information they've shared so far is that municipalities can be and will be incentivized to put in a new plan for their MS4 permit along with neighboring municipalities.
As they should.
Right. So that you really can design it like a watershed.
Yeah.
So
it's great. And I remember when we first started the CAP, it wasn't always like that.
No.
And I'm really glad that they listened to that feedback.
Exactly. That's some of the things we said. What's going to be different?
Yeah. And so that's the type of thing that's encouraging, not just because now there's this other tool, but also shows that, hey, you see something isn't working out great, bring it up and changes can happen. So,
yeah. Is there anything you want to add related to CBF's Pennsylvania team or goals for the year?
We have things like education, where they're taking kids out doing things here in Pennsylvania. We have our staff attorney who is working on litigation, also getting bills through the state legislature. But we also have these on the ground people like Ashley, Ashley's amazing. Think about it. I would love to have someone calculate the number of trees she has planted in Lancaster County over the years.
I think she knows, actually.
I remember some sort of talking with her, and there is an estimate of some amount. It's incredible. So, but a lot of times, as you'll see in any organization, sometimes things get siloed. You're not seeing that same amount of integration where people are kind of, the left hand isn't necessarily know what the right hand is doing. So we're trying to do more integration of that. Particularly, you have people such as Caitlin and myself who are doing this planning work. You have folks like Ashley and Kristen and a newer employee, Reese, who have a long history of actually implementing things, getting practices in there. And of course, we have the earmarks teams for the Peckway and Half Moon Creek watersheds. So bringing all that together in a more sort of concerted way, a more focused way, that connects to, and wherever your hand is with that buzzer, keep it away because I'm immediately going to spell out this thing. I mean, I've been sitting there in fear of being acronym shamed. I'm just waiting to like,
next PAT
you're going to
meeting.
ring the bell and she's just going to go, shame, shame.
And there he goes out the door, hanging his head.
So we have our 4 Ps. So PA 4P, and those are plans, partners, priority places, and practices.
Oh,
So
wow.
What this is, you get these plans in the beginning, things like Caitlin and I do. Then the key is to find those key partners that are going to implement those things. And we want them to be in the priority areas. We know we have limited resources. We can't do everything. It's a matter of getting the right people in the right place to implement the practices that are going to have the biggest impacts. And those practices, because of where we are, they tend to be focused on ag areas, which makes sense.
Yeah.
I found like you can, depending on the person with whom you're having the conversation, you can shut the conversation down by focusing on the bay.
Mm-hmm.
There's some of the farmers here who've never been to the bay, and a lot of them haven't.
Right.
I talk about that. It's not real in the same way that I say, hey, right here, this is your stream. We want my kids to be able to fish in it, swim in it. And that's kind of very much reflected in how we do things here in PA. It's like, we make it relevant here. We show the benefits to the people here. And so we fight for things here, particularly our staff attorney in Pennsylvania, Trish Salvia, and then my boss, Harry Campbell. They do a lot of work with the legislature.
Well, how are you approaching beyond 2025?
Well, I mean, we touched a little bit on the Caesar report, kind of looking, kind of sort of conceptualizing how we see the issues we're facing when it comes to the Bay. We have decades of experience to draw on. Mm-hmm. So it isn't like we're starting from scratch. But we also, kind of like we said with the Lancaster County CAP, you need to look what worked, what didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you need to have a vision that has solutions for everyone, that works for everyone, that everyone benefits from. And the other thing is coming from bottom up rather than top down, which is exactly in line with what we did with the CAP.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think those are going to be some important things going forward. And we're doing Lancaster County, great things are happening here. I have to give you credit, Allyson, because I look back from when we started the CAP, you've built a very impressive team.
I'm extremely proud of and excited about the team.
I work a fair amount with Megan. She is amazing.
Oh my gosh.
She is.
She keeps so many details, keeps them straight, and just then dives in on the strategy and then putting pieces together. So I'm great. I'm so glad that you get to work with her.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know, it's that sort of bottom up. These are the things. You see these things happening here, and that is what's going to carry us beyond 2025. So.
Thanks for your work, Brian. It's super, super helpful at the local level with Pennsylvania and then Pennsylvania's role within the Bay watershed.
Yeah, great. All right. There's a rumor, Ken, that your favorite portion of the program is coming up.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because I've talked too much and too long.
It is that time. It is trivia time.
Huzzah!
Alrighty. You, as we previously determined, are a fisherman.
Oh boy. Yes.
So we played a similar game when I believe it was Sally Reynolds was here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she's a bird watcher.
Mm-hmm.
So I described the bird. She told me what the bird was. So I'm going to describe the fish. You tell me what the fish is.
Okay.
Here we
Challenge.
go. And away we go. This is a freshwater perciform fish native to most of Canada and to the northern United States. It's a close relative of the European zander.
Walleye.
It is a walleye.
Yes.
I never would have gotten that, by the way.
Perciform means perch-like.
Aha.
There you go. This is our carnivorous freshwater ray-finned fish in the Centricida family, native to eastern and central United States, Canada, Mexico. Very, very common. Fishing, this is one of the big ones.
Are we going to talk about bass? Or
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, of the largemouth. They're in the Susquehanna. They are not native to it.
Interesting. So where are they native to?
Mississippi drainage and the Great Lakes drainage.
Interesting.
They've been introduced along with the smallmouth, which is kind of like a cornerstone species now. In the Susquehanna.
Well, there are two types of this species in North American freshwaters. In the genus Pomoxis, both are popular game fish among recreational anglers.
Oh, goodness. That's tricky. Those are the sunfishes. So it would, I don't know if you're talking about, because it could be a couple things. I think like a crappie. It could be.
You got it.
Woo! There you go.
Woo! This is also known as a preacher. This freshwater perciform fish, native to much of North America, was described in 1814 by Samuel Lathan Mitchell.
So perciforms, that narrows it down to be something like a perch. Oh, yellow perch.
It is. This species of large freshwater predatory fish, native to North America, and is actually known for a shortened version of its name.
It's a muskellunge or muskie.
It is a muskie.
I believe that is the genus Essox.
A species of carnivorous fish in the genus Esox. They are commonly found in moderately salty and fresh waters in the northern hemisphere.
Well, Esox, then, it's going to be the pike family, so it could be a northern pike.
It is. Yeah.
Or a pickerel.
This species of freshwater fish is in the char genus
Brook trout?
It is brook trout. Thank you for not making me go. Let's do one more. First discovered in 1962, this fish was described as similar to a combination of a carp and a tuna. This flatbush fish is native to waters around New York and is known to congregate with crabs.
Oh, dear goodness. Now, you see, you're talking about the salt. Jimmy Buffett? No, I don't know. I'm sure it's some pun thing coming out of this, but I don't know Flatbush.
That is the incredible Mr. Limpet.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Am I going to get shame for not knowing that?
No, I'm shame. Folks, Uncle Ken is showing his age. That was a Don Knotts movie from 1962.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. I was actually describing him as in his fish form.
I just mentioned Don Knotts and Phyllis Diller to people in our Teams chat at work a couple days ago.
And they all probably went, who?
Harry loved it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Oh, my goodness. That's it. That's our show.
We've hit the max.
We're done.
Thank you for allowing me to punish you this week. I imagine this, if I'm not mistaken, is coming out around Groundhog Day.
Around that time.
The 4th, I believe, is when
around
it
that
is.
time.
Well, hope you had a good one, you woodchuck chuckers.
Rise and shine. Thank you, Brian, for coming in. You educated the heck out of us, I'll tell you what, and entertained us as well.
I do my best.
Brian, thank you for what you do and the way that you bring Lancaster's story to Pennsylvania.
Well, thank you for letting me tell that story. I really appreciate it.
Always.
Well, folks, we will be back in just a couple of weeks. Until then, take care. This episode of Clean Water Conversations is sponsored by Chesapeake Conservancy. Conserve, restore, and empower with data. And produced by Lancaster Clean Water Partners, striving for clean and clear waterways by 2040. If you have comments or suggestions for show topics or are interested in becoming a sponsor, please contact us at info@lancastercleanwaterpartners.com. Thanks for listening.